He cheated on me, then sat across from me like I was the problem, like betrayal was just a misunderstanding. And he said, calm as ever, "You're not the same woman I fell in love with." That's when I learned something terrifying. Some men will break you, then resent you for bleeding. Before him, I was light, not naive, just open. I laughed loudly, I trusted fully, I loved like tomorrow was guaranteed. As a Black woman, that kind of softness is already an act of courage. He loved that about me. At least, he said he did. Said I made him feel safe. Said I believed in him when nobody else did. I became his peace while slowly abandoning my own. The change didn't start with cheating, it started with distance. Conversations shortened, eye contact avoided, affection rationed like I hadn't earned it. His phone was always face down, always on silent, and when I asked simple questions, he treated curiosity like accusation. "You're doing too much." So I learned to do less. The night I found out wasn't dramatic. No shouting, no confrontation scene from a movie, just a notification, a name I didn't know, and a tone I knew too well. Her messages were soft, playful, hopeful. They sounded like me before love turned into survival. When I confronted him, he didn't panic, didn't beg, didn't even lie well. He said, "It didn't mean anything." Men say that when it means everything to the person they hurt. That sentence haunted me, because if it meant nothing, why did it change me so completely? Why did I start questioning my reflection, my body, my value? I stayed, not because it didn't hurt, but because I was taught that strong women endure, that love is proven by how much pain you can carry quietly. I forgave him before I healed, smiled while my chest still burned, told myself trust would return if I tried hard enough. But forgiveness without accountability turns love into self-betrayal. I started watching instead of relaxing, listening for lies, preparing for impact. I spoke less, shared less, stopped dreaming out loud, not because I didn't have dreams, but because I was tired of watching them be disrespected. And that's when he noticed. "You're different now," he said. "You don't smile like you used to." As if betrayal doesn't rewrite people. He missed the version of me that trusted blindly, the woman who didn't question inconsistency. But he never missed protecting her. He wanted forgiveness without repair, loyalty without effort, love without responsibility, and I finally saw it clearly. I wasn't changing because I stopped loving him. I was changing because I started loving myself, quietly, carefully, for the first time in a long time. As a Black woman, we're taught to be resilient, but no one teaches us how to rest without guilt. I realized I had been shrinking to make his mistakes easier to forgive. That realization hurt more than the cheating. Leaving didn't happen all at once. It happened in moments. Moments where I chose silence over explanation, peace over proof. The day I walked away, I wasn't angry. I was clear, and clarity is something manipulation can't survive. I didn't lose him. I lost the version of myself that thought love meant tolerance. Healing wasn't loud. It was gentle, messy, private, but it was real. Now when someone asks why I changed, I don't explain, because the right people don't require justification for growth. He cheated, then asked me why I changed. But the real question is this: why did he expect me to stay the same after he taught me how unsafe love could be? After I left, the silence was louder than any argument we ever had. No messages, no explanations, just space, and the unfamiliar sound of my own thoughts. I kept replaying everything. Every red flag I painted green. Every moment my intuition begged me to listen, and I told it to be quiet. People asked why I didn't leave sooner. They never ask why I was taught to stay longer than I should. As a Black woman, we're praised for loyalty, but rarely protected from what that loyalty costs us. Some nights I missed him, not because he was good to me, but because trauma bonds feel like love when pain becomes familiar. I had to unlearn the idea that chaos means passion and peace means boredom. I remembered how often I apologized for reacting to what he caused, how I learned to doubt my own pain. He reached out eventually, they always do, not with accountability, but curiosity. He said, "I didn't think you'd actually leave," and that told me everything. He wasn't shocked by my absence, he was offended by my boundaries. That's when I realized he loved the access, not the responsibility. Healing forced me to sit with myself without distraction, without explaining, without defending my decision. I cried over versions of myself that didn't know better yet. I grieved the woman who thought love required sacrifice, but never safety. Therapy didn't fix me, it introduced me back to myself. I learned that being too much was often just me asking for the bare minimum. I stopped romanticizing potential and started honoring patterns. Love should not feel like surveillance. It should not feel like strategy. It should not feel like self-abandonment. I stopped explaining my standards to people who benefit from me having none. There was a moment, standing alone in my kitchen, where I felt peace without permission, and I cried harder than I ever did with him. That's when I understood. He didn't break me. He revealed what I was willing to survive, and survival is not the same as love. I started choosing softness again, but this time with boundaries. I became selective with my energy, not cold, not bitter, just intentional. Some people only know how to love you when you're convenient. I am no longer convenient. If someone asks why I don't tolerate cheating anymore, I don't tell a story. I tell the truth. I changed because pain educated me, because self-respect demanded evolution. I changed because staying the same was costing me my soul. To the woman listening to this who feels herself shrinking, that is not love asking you to be smaller. That is fear asking you to disappear. Healing isn't linear. Some mornings I woke up strong. Other mornings, his name still weighed something, and I let both be true. I had to forgive myself for the years I spent explaining pain instead of escaping it. I stopped asking, why wasn't I enough? And started asking, why did I accept so little? That question rewired everything. I noticed how calm my body felt when I no longer had to monitor another adult's behavior. Peace was unfamiliar, but addictive. I realized how often love felt like labor, and how rarely he noticed who was always tired. He used to say I was strong, but strength should never be a requirement for staying. I stopped romanticizing struggle, stopped calling pain growth just to survive it. There is a difference between loyalty and self-neglect. I had confused the two. I learned that some people don't cheat because they hate you. They cheat because they don't fear losing you. And I had made myself too easy to keep while being disrespected. Now I protect my softness like something sacred, because it is. I don't argue with red flags anymore. I leave. I don't ask for clarity from confusion. I choose consistency instead. Love should not require self-erasure to be maintained. If someone feels safer lying than being honest, that is not love. That is convenience. I used to think leaving meant failure. Now I know it meant courage. I didn't lose years. I gained wisdom early, and that matters.
If he ever asks again why I changed, I won't explain. Growth doesn't require approval from the people who resisted it. There's a strange peace that comes when you stop needing closure from the person who caused the wound. I used to rehearse conversations in my head, what I'd say if he finally understood. Now I don't rehearse at all. Understanding is not required for me to move on. I realized I spent years trying to be chosen by someone who benefited from my uncertainty. Confidence changes the kind of access people have to you, and some people don't like that. I stopped responding quickly, not to play games, but because urgency no longer lived in my chest. Love shouldn't feel like waiting for someone to become decent. I learned that apologies without change are just strategies to keep you nearby. He once told me, "You're hard to love now." What he meant was, I can't get away with less anymore. I no longer confuse intensity with intimacy. One drains you, the other nourishes you. There was a time I would have explained that difference. Now I let people reveal which one they're offering. I don't miss the chaos. I don't miss the guessing. I don't miss shrinking myself to avoid conflict. Peace showed me how loud dysfunction really was. I became comfortable being misunderstood by people committed to misunderstanding me. Silence stopped feeling like abandonment and started feeling like protection. I don't chase reassurance anymore. I look for consistency. If I have to beg for honesty, the answer is already clear. I stopped explaining my boundaries to people who crossed them as a personality trait. I learned that loneliness in peace is lighter than loneliness in a relationship. I don't ask, "Why did he do that?" anymore. I ask, "Why would I stay if he did?" That question keeps me free. I am no longer the woman who mistakes endurance for love. I am the woman who knows that trust, once broken, changes the architecture of the heart, and rebuilding requires honesty, not nostalgia.
Time passed in ordinary ways. Grocery runs, laundry nights, quiet mornings that didn't need permission. Healing didn't announce itself. It blended in. I noticed how my shoulders slowly dropped, how my jaw unclenched, how my body stopped bracing for impact. That was new. No one talks enough about how betrayal lives in the body. The hypervigilance, the second guessing, the way your nervous system memorizes pain. I had to teach myself that peace wasn't temporary, that calm wasn't something to earn, that safety could exist without tension. For a long time, I equated excitement with anxiety, butterflies with warning signs, intensity with depth. I don't anymore. As a Black woman, we're often told we're strong enough to handle more, but no one asks why we're always the ones expected to. I carried generations of endurance into a relationship that only required honesty. That imbalance cost me years. I started noticing how often I was the emotional manager, the peacekeeper, the translator of feelings, roles I never applied for. Love shouldn't feel like a second job, especially one with no benefits and constant overtime. I remembered how often I softened my truth to avoid his defensiveness, how often I chose harmony over honesty. Silencing myself didn't save the relationship. It only delayed my leaving. There's a grief that comes not from losing someone, but from realizing how long you abandoned yourself. That grief didn't scream. It sat quietly beside me and waited to be acknowledged. Some days, I still wondered who I might have been if I had trusted myself sooner. But regret didn't own me. It informed me. I stopped rewriting the past to make him look better and me look foolish. The truth was enough. He wasn't confused. He wasn't lost. He wasn't working through things. He was comfortable. Comfortable enough to risk me. Comfortable enough to assume I'd stay. And when I didn't, that's when the story changed. Suddenly, I was cold, distant, different.
words people use when they lose access to your softness. I learned that some people don't miss you, they miss the version of you that tolerated them. I am no longer that woman. I don't explain my growth in rooms that benefit from my silence. I don't negotiate my worth with people who discounted it once already. There is power in not needing to be understood by the person who misunderstood you the most. I don't romanticize the past anymore. I remember it accurately. Accuracy healed me more than nostalgia ever could. I changed because survival taught me lessons love never should have had to. And if that makes me harder to recognize, good. I was never meant to stay the same after learning the truth. There were days nothing hurt anymore, and that scared me more than the pain ever did. Because pain was familiar, peace was not. I had to learn that calm doesn't mean something is missing, it means something toxic is gone. I stopped checking my phone, hoping for an apology that would finally sound sincere. Closure didn't come from his words, it came from my nervous system finally resting. I noticed how I laughed again, not loudly like before, but honestly. I trusted myself enough to stop second-guessing my decisions. That felt revolutionary. I realized how often I had confused familiarity with safety. Just because something feels known doesn't mean it's good for you. I no longer replay old arguments trying to prove my point to someone who never wanted to understand it. Winning imaginary conversations never healed real wounds. I started honoring the woman I am now instead of mourning the woman I was. Growth doesn't erase the past, it reframes it. I stopped seeing my softness as a weakness that needed to be guarded by control. Now it's protected by boundaries. I don't test people anymore to see if they'll disappoint me. I observe. Patterns tell the truth, words try to hide. I learned that consistency is the loudest form of love. And chaos is not chemistry. It's a warning. I no longer feel the urge to explain myself to people who benefited from my confusion. Silence became my filter. Not everyone deserves access to my story. I noticed how differently I breathe now. Slower, deeper, unafraid. That's how I know I'm no longer in survival mode. Love should not feel like strategy. It should feel like alignment. If I have to negotiate my value, I'm already in the wrong room. I stopped mourning what could have been and started appreciating what wasn't allowed to destroy me. Some lessons come wrapped in heartbreak because that's the only way we'll listen. I changed because I finally heard myself clearly, and once you hear yourself, really hear yourself, you can't unhear the truth. He cheated, then asked me why I changed, but change was never my apology. It was my evolution. I didn't become distant, I became whole, and wholeness doesn't beg, doesn't explain, and never stays where it isn't honored.